Okay, this is a really fun program here. I had planned this one I wanted to do for a long time. You see the historical marker on the left side of the Theatrical Troupe Massacre by the Seminoles. This is a historical marker that I, I finally found it this past weekend when I was in St. Augustine, or actually a week ago now. It's one I've been looking for 7 years. I looked back in my notes that the first time was when we awarded Frank Lomer the Legacy Award for the Seminole War Foundation, and that was in 2017, according to my notes. And that Sunday, I went to Picolata and I was looking for the historical marker and never saw it. Um, you go down the Picolata Road, which is from St. Augustine. It's Highway 16, and then it branches off, and I think it's State Road 208, which goes to Picolata, or where the Picolata landing on the St. Johns River used to be. And I checked again, like two other times. There was some road construction. One of my friends, Harvard Bernie, said that it was hiding in the trees, and there's behind it, you can see there's real thick trees and palmettos, and so they cut it back. So this time I saw it as went down the road about a mile from the intersection, went around a slight curve, and it's on the north side of the road, freshly mowed grass and a sidewalk. So I finally found it. Sometimes these historical markers are elusive and take a while to find. It says on the marker on Saturday, May 23rd, 1840, a theatrical troupe and other travelers on en route to St. Augustine were ambushed on the Picolata Road by Coacoochee Wildcat and his band of marauding Seminoles. One of the performers and four others were killed, while search parties tracked the elusive Indians in vain. The undaunted actors fulfilled a 2 week engagement in St. Augustine months later, and the Indians appeared wearing Shakespearean costumes from the plundered baggage wagon. Well, that's only part of the story. The best part of the story, they don't even tell, which I'm going to tell you. Guy Labrie did a painting that you see on the right, suspected foul play of Coacoochee and his warriors plundering the wagons of the costumes. And there's a skull on the ground. That's old York. Uh, they're Shakespearean actors. And the story's much more fun than what's normally been told. I included it in my book, Alachua Ambush. I questioned whether to include it or not because it's a little further off from Alachua County, but it was such a great story that it had to be told, so I had to include it. Well, anyway, here's the historical marker. As I mentioned, along the grass, I had to park on the shoulder of the road and walk down the sidewalk to get a picture of it here, standing all by itself. How could I have missed it? So anyway, Coacoochee, he's actually a Miccosukee, and the Miccosukee will tell you that. There's a few portraits here, one by John T. Sprague in his book, The Florida War, The Origin, Progress, and Conclusion of the Florida War. And Charles Coe has a picture of him in his book. It's pretty much just a thumbnail, so I had to expand it a bit. And apparently it's taken from a painting that's now lost. Uh, had kind of interesting expression on his face here. He's kind of undaunted or challenging the painter, whoever painted it. It'd be really great if we found the original painting. Apparently, it was damaged back when Coe put it in his book, apparently, but we don't know where the original is, so all we have is the thumbnail. So, Coacoochee, little backstory behind him is that his father, King Philip or Philip, also known as Amathla, was one of the main Miccosukee chiefs uh, uh, under Micanopy. And right before the Second Seminole War started, Philip and his son Coacoochee went and burned all the sugar plantations from St. Augustine south into what's now Volusia County. They burned Bulowville in Flagler County, and the Dunlawton sugar mill ruins had some uh, quite interesting and spectacular skirmishes and battles with the Florida militia in Dunlawton and Bulowville. And so, anyway, kind of interesting story there. Here's a painting by Captain John Rogers Vinton of Seminole or Miccosukee, might be Coacoochee, looking over the smoldering ruins of one of the sugar plantation factories. And Coacoochee, he was uh, may have even been a more uh, uh, voracious warrior than Osceola. It seems like he was more proactive than Osceola, attacking the soldiers and making raids around St. Augustine south there. Here's another picture, painting by Guy Labrie, Wildcat Red Warrior, with two dead soldiers in the background. There's one incident where they found two express riders that had been killed, possibly by Coacoochee. They figured it happened the same day, maybe definitely by the same warriors. And Coacoochee was suspect of being the one who did it. So, anyway, story, I read what's on the historical marker, and there's newspaper accounts of the same time. I'm not going to say too much of the actual attack, but I want to tell what happens afterwards, which is the story we're never told. And I'm reading from my book here, Alachua Ambush. I'll have it in the comments down below. 4 days after Lieutenant Sanderson was killed near Micanopy, Miccosukee warriors under Coacoochee Wildcat attacked a theatrical troupe in two wagons on the Picolata Road west of St. Augustine, reported in the Richmond Enquirer on June 2nd, 1840. Now the actors were making the rounds, came down the St. Johns River, I imagine, unloaded at Picolata to go the several mile, was it like 16 miles to St. Augustine. Sunday afternoon between 9 and 10 o'clock, Mr. Forbes' theatrical company with some others were on the way from Picolata to St. Augustine when within 5 or 6 miles of the latter place, the party occupying two wagons, the wagon in the rear was attacked by a party of Indians and Mr. C. Vos killed, two others missing, supposed to be part of Mr. Forbes' company. Mr. Forbes, it seems, was in a front wagon with the ladies of the party who escaped and reached St. Augustine in safety. It is supposed that the Indians conceived the wagons to be a military escort. We congratulate the estimable Mr. Forbes on his escape. Mr. Vos was formerly of Jersey City, New Jersey, and for the 2 or 3 years of Brunswick in Glynn County, Georgia. And so here's a letter Major Churchill, Major Sylvanus Churchill, I believe his first name was, to General Walker Keith Armistead at Fort King from Picolata, May 23rd, 1840. This morning, about 10 and 11 o'clock, a small carriage and wagon with citizens were going hence to St. Augustine. They were attacked by about 15 Indians a mile this side of 6 Mile Post or Fort Baker. I think Fort Baker was probably halfway between Picolata and St. Augustine, and 3 men killed. And soon after, a wagon coming from St. Augustine was attacked a mile beyond this post, probably the same Indians, and 2 men, citizens, killed. I'd come from St. Augustine this morning with an escort of 3 men, met my van mess with a small escort about midway on the road, and neither of us saw any Indians or signs. A report was made here at 12:30 of the attack on this side. Yeah. Anyway, I'll go back to those. this is the actual letter. You see, it took me a while to transcribe it. Anyway, a report was made here at 12:30 of the attack on this side, and Lieutenant Ord, who was here, started off with 4 men mounted. I learned he met a party from St. Augustine arriving at this spot. So looked like Major Churchill stopped for breakfast, and, and as they're on the road, they heard of the attack. A Negro man escaped from a wagon on the other side of the post and ran back to town, gave the alarm, and 75 or 100 people came out directly. And I learned by a person who came here since that 2 parties of 15 men each went north of the road and the other party south in pursuit. Expresses were sent to St. Augustine, all the posts south. Here I have but 9 men, and there are less at each post on the St. Augustine Road, except at Fort Searle. Well, Fort Searle only has about a dozen men looking at the post returns. Not enough at either to examine the country for more than 2 or 3 miles around the post. And he continues on, but that's all about the attack. And what happens after that time, Coacoochee, here's kind of a outrageous artistic picture of the event from done in 1892. Coacoochee and his warriors went around to Fort Searle near St. Augustine and kind of danced and taunted the soldiers inside the fort, dared them to come out and fight him. And the soldiers inside the fort were probably outnumbered about 3 to 1, so they wisely decided to stay inside there. Later on, there's a newspaper article, and I have a little clipping from it here. This is from October. It said a short time since, Lieutenant Sanders, 2nd Dragoon, being on scout, captured a warrior on the Wekiva River. And that's interesting because that's where Coacoochee had his hidden encampment on the Wekiva. And after hearing his story and placing no confidence in it, ordered him to be shot, which was done, and hung him up as a terror and a warning to his party. He had about him a portion of dresses and trinkets of the Forbes theatricals and cartridges, which were taken from a portion of Colonel Harney's command, who were a short time since shot at the same place. A couple of dragoons were attacked near the Wekiva River and shot, so they had plunder from there. And here's another article on that. And of course, it was reported much in the newspapers back then. So the rest of the story, after Coacoochee and his warriors left Fort Searle, all the militia and soldiers are chasing to the south, but Coacoochee and his warriors didn't go in that direction. They went north to Mr. Jencks' plantation there. Let me find that letter. So, but anyway, Coacoochee decided to have a victory party at the Jencks plantation. Mr. Edward T. Jencks was one of the wealthiest around from St. Augustine, had a mercantile business, and his son and himself barricaded themselves in the plantation house while Wildcat and his warriors enjoyed a tremendous feast cooked by the plantation slaves. And here's a letter by Lieutenant Colonel William Gates, 3rd Artillery, to Colonel Twiggs and Brigadier General Armistead. Colonel Twiggs was commanding this section of the country. And of course, General Armistead was overall commander of the force in Florida. Colonel Gates here, 3rd Artillery, kind of in command in St. Augustine. Writes from St. Augustine, May 8th, 1840. I have the honor of informing you that on the morning of the 26th at 6 o'clock, a Negro man came to me from a plantation of Mr. Jencks, situated at the head of the North River, 25 miles by land and 21 by water from this place, and informed me that his master's house was surrounded by the Indians, whereupon I called for volunteers and obtained 20 citizens and taking 7 mounted regulars, we proceeded on the road. We had not gone more than 12 miles before we saw many tracks leading onward. These were followed up to the very house of Mr. Jencks, at which we arrived at 10 o'clock. We found that Mr. Jencks had entrenched himself and manfully stood ready for defense with his overseers and his son. So Mr. Jencks and his son, the overseers, are barricaded inside the plantation house. We learned from the blacks that Wildcat had arrived there at 8 o'clock the night before, and he had collected all the blacks and made the cooks get supper for him and his party, and that he remained there until 6 o'clock the next morning. He did not approach the dwelling so as to allow Mr. Jencks to get a shot at him or his warriors. After obliging the Indians to bring forward their blankets and eating plentifully of the fowls and hominy, they all decamped, and taking only a few of the negroes with them. While the party were at supper, the cook said they counted 30 warriors. They said they did not wish to hurt the blacks. They only wanted the white man and plunder, that they saw the mailman, but they did not hurt him. They had killed 2 before and they got nothing but a bundle of papers. So that's saying those 2 express riders that were killed, that's who they were. So Coacoochee did do it. They would not fire the house as they wanted the gunpowder that was in it. So they didn't burn down the house. They were hoping to get the gunpowder. They said they got much plunder on the Picolata Road, where they killed the 4 men there on the 23rd. That's the actor troupe. Wildcat, while at supper, had on the turban of Otello, taken from the players' trunks that were in the wagons, which they captured. He said that he would not take 100 head of cattle for the dress of Otello, black velvet richly trimmed. Thus we see them, they were bold and much at their ease, having been round us for 2 or 3 days before examining all our positions and learning our force as far as practical. After learning all we could as their intended route from Mr. Jencks, I mustered 29 persons and followed on the trail for 20 miles south. For 15 miles, the trail was large and plain, consisting of 2 horses, 1 mule, and many warriors. At that distance, we lost the foot tracks. Okay, so what the Miccosukee warriors did, they left the plantation and they left a big trail for the soldiers to follow. But as they were going along, 1 warrior, 2 warriors would splinter off and they'd leave the main trail there, and the soldiers are following the main trail, not seeing the warriors where they splintered off, going down the trail. So they're following them, what's now probably the 12-mile swamp. And so they're going into the swamp following this trail. And then it kind of dead ends. Let me read about that here. Although we had the very best trailers with us, well, that remains to be seen. But we kept on after the horse tracks, believing that we should find all together further on. We, however, failed. Our course was taken as far as the 12-mile swamp, up to which we went there. We could go no further with our horses. The guides and others were there dismounted. The trail followed for nearly 2 miles when all the trailing party returned to their horses. They reported that it was too difficult and dangerous for the horses to pass into, and they declared themselves too much exhausted to proceed any further that day, it being 11 o'clock p.m. So here they are at night, and then it begins to rain. The rain had set in 4 hours before and still continued, so that every man was discouraged from further pursuit. When I ordered my adjutant to lead a party of 7 men back to the city, at which we arrived, the 12-hour of our scout having gone over 55 miles, as assured by our guides. On the next morning, I was resolved to go out again. Lieutenant Ridgely and myself, with our double-barrel guns, proceeded alone, for we could not obtain a man fit for duty. They're all worn out, not willing to go. My little force raised at Fort Peyton and Fort Hanson still being out, consisted of 7 men. We went to 6 Mile Station on the Picolata Road. There obtained 6 men. So they have 7 and 6, and the 2 officers 15. With these, we went on to examine where it was said 10 or more tracks were seen on the road 5 o'clock on the night before, leading south, but the rain had effaced every trace made therein on that night, so they lost the trail. I am not sure, but am much inclined to believe that as the Indians had their packs loaded with plunder and 18 trunks of theatrical dresses and blankets and company, that they are satisfied for the present that they have gone south. So they're going south to Coacoochee's hideout on the Wekiva River. Lieutenant William Hardy was active in search of the enemy on the 24th with 8 or 10 dragoons. They came from Fort Fulton at the time. When the second alarm was given, he was brought into town yesterday on a sick bed, but his men have returned to their post, which was Fort Fulton. The order for the raising of a company of mountain men for the defense of the city will be complied. A company of mounted men for the defense of this city will be complied with as promptly as possible, and a report sent to you accordingly. So, so pretty much they got lost in the swamp and failed to get the Miccosukees loaded with plunder. And then on, like the next February or March, Coacoochee and his warriors show up at Fort Cummings, which is now in Polk County, probably about 200 miles to the south, are wearing the theatrical costumes of the actors. There it said one of the accounts said in a grotesque manner, just to shock the soldiers and the officers. Just read a newspaper account of a few months after this happened, where they found a warrior with some of the theatrical outfits and killed him on the spot. So anyway, I thought you might enjoy that, and I made that guy would be painting as the background. One of the most interesting events, Coacoochee, he's one of the most interesting warriors at the beginning of the war. He plundered a lighthouse, I think in what's now Volusia County, and took some of the reflectors and was wearing them as turban, and rides out, I think it is at the Battle of Dunlawton, without a shirt on, but in all his finery, wearing the reflecting pieces in his turban there. Uh, he was eventually captured a year following this. That's a different story, and quite an interesting time out west as well. But hope you enjoyed this. This is just one of my favorite stories, and now that I found the historical marker, I can make a video of it. And so we'll talk again soon. I'm going to try to do a question and answer, which I just posted a video of. And other than that, I'm going to Rick Obermeyer's memorial service in Orlando, and hope to see some of you there. And we'll talk again.